Or let's unpack this. We are diving into a really monumental period, the twilight of the Golden City of Troy.
Mm.
And the sources we're using, they read more like an epic myth than, straightforward history. These aren't just battle reports.
No, not at all. They're almost like the intimate diaries of a civilization that's collapsing.
Exactly. It's this close-up, visceral look at the final days, the fall of kings, and then the messy birth of what comes next.
Indeed. And this deep dive, it's really an examination of human nature under the most extreme pressure you can imagine. The bravery we see, it's uplifting, but it's only made real because it's set against this backdrop of absolute panic and despair.
Right, so we're going beneath the armor.
We have to. We need to get into the crippling internal lives of these legendary figures. We need to understand the financial reality that's propping up their empires or failing to, and then, of course, the shocking fates that are determined by prophecy and, well, betrayal.
It's our mission. We're moving beyond the simple story of Helen was kidnapped, let's go to war for glory. Our sources are zeroed in on the endgame. The revelations around the Trojan horse,
Yeah.
and we need to be very clear about what that term means in these chapters.
Crucially, yes.
The tragic death of Hektor, the cataclysm at Thera, and then these desperate first steps towards a new settlement at the Seven Hills.
And our goal is to pull out those critical nuggets of knowledge about what happens when empires crash. We're really going to focus on the brutal, desperate financial realities that drove the war in the first place.
I think that's the part that gets missed so often.
It always does. And also the human cost of leadership and how these, surprising acts of mercy and loyalty managed to bloom in the middle of total chaos. We're looking for the economic engine that fueled this whole bloody decade.
So let's start with the aggressors, the Mycenae and their king of kings, Agamemnon. I mean, we all read the epics and we assume this war is about prestige, honor, Helen. But our sources, they reveal a motive that's so much more cynical and, frankly, a little frightening.
You've hit the critical insight immediately. The invasion was never really about Helen. I mean, maybe that was the spark, the excuse.
The PR angle.
Exactly. The real reason for this massive decade-long war was that the Mycenaean Empire was, to use the source's vivid phrase, bleeding to death financially.
Bleeding to death? How? I mean, on paper, their empire was vast. They'd conquered so much of the Great Green.
And that was the problem. It wasn't a lack of territory. It was a lack of cash flow. Their gold mines, which had been the bedrock of their whole system, they'd failed. So they'd poured all this capital into expanding, setting up new garrisons, supply chains. But the expansion became a liability, not an asset. It cost more to hold than it was bringing in.
It's a vicious cycle. So the more they conquer, the deeper the hole gets.
Precisely. They needed huge amounts of gold just to train fresh soldiers to occupy the land they had just won. Their success was literally accelerating their failure.
So Agamemnon is trapped.
Completely. He has two catastrophic choices. Either he shrinks the army, which guarantees political chaos in his own head on a platter, or he finds a fresh, massive, and immediate source of wealth.
And that desperation points him straight at Troy.
Straight east. Troy wasn't just some rich trading city. It was the last viable option. It was Priam's legendary treasury. The war was a highly leveraged, corporate takeover disguised as a glorious rescue mission. Without Troy's gold, the Mycenaean Empire collapses. It's that simple.
And a king under that kind of pressure, that existential threat, he becomes obsessed with control, even control over fate itself. The sources go into detail about Agamemnon's terrifying relationship with prophecy.
His arrogance was just monumental. The sources say he despised being subject to the whims of prophecy. He saw it as a challenge to his own authority.
So he wants to get rid of them.
Openly wished he could kill all the legitimate seers and just replace them with, controllable fools. Guys like the priest Atheos who would just tell him what he wanted to hear.
And what he wanted to hear was very specific.
Only one thing. The prophecy he went to get from the Cave of Wings. It was chillingly self-serving. He just wanted validation for all the blood and gold he was spending.
What was it he heard?
The line was, "The last king of the Golden City will be Mycenae." And the moment he heard that key phrase, he was gone. Left the cave immediately, didn't even look back at the priest who was choking on the hemlock he'd used to induce the vision.
Wow.
It's the ultimate deadly example of confirmation bias. He heard only what he wanted to hear and just disregarded the human cost entirely.
And this need to control destiny, it ties directly into some specific, documented examples of his cruelty. There's a really disturbing ritual, isn't there, with Agamemnon and Atheos before a sacrifice of Poseidon.
It is. He had demanded an unsoiled young woman to please his knights, and that phrase, it just rips away the whole veneer of the great commander. It exposes him as a predator. This isn't just a general critique, it's a specific, visceral detail the sources give us to define the man.
And then a soldier brings the wrong person for the sacrifice.
Right. They bring the closest child they could find in the hills. A scrawny little boy, not the beautiful woman he wanted. And Agamemnon's reaction is just ice. His voice is low, his tone icy, and he asks if this little wretch would possibly please his knights.
The cruelty isn't just in the demand, it's in the complete dismissal of the boy as a human being.
It's the lack of emotion that's so terrifying. It wasn't about the god, it was about the quality of the offering matching the king's own barbaric personal tastes. And of course, the priest Atheos, terrified, just agrees, oh yes, this will suffice. It shows you the total corruption and fear at the heart of the Mycenaean command.
This tells us so much about the war machine they were running. No pity, no humanity. And that brings us to this really powerful moment in the sources. The dialogue between the Dardanian king, Helikaon, and the captured Mycenaean commander, Manados.
Yes, this conversation is where the material really challenges our whole concept of heroism. Helikaon is, absolutely furious over the murder of his wife, Alicia.
Understandable.
He confronts Manados, demanding to know if murder is the only skill you can ever seek to master. He's looking for moral justification for his hatred, but Manados, he just won't give it to him.
And Manados delivers this cold, brutal truth about war, right? He just cuts through the whole hero-villain dynamic.
He does. He says, had I won here, I would have been declared a hero, but I lost. Do not seek to lecture me. The winner is a hero, and the loser is a murderer. He just strips away all the honor and reduces it to a simple equation of power.
That is just a devastating rebuttal. It suggests that if the tables were turned, Agamemnon would be remembered as a vicious pirate, not a king. But what's really interesting is how Helikaon reacts. He doesn't just dismiss it.
No, he processes it. He has this kind of aha moment of moral complexity right there in the interrogation. He remembers a time when he, as a commander, accidentally led one of his own soldiers into a situation where the man wept over killing an innocent. Helikaon realizes he had made that soldier a murderer.
And that forces him to see himself in his enemy.
Exactly. Even though he's enraged, he admits his own complicity in the violence. He concludes he has no right to lecture on the vileness of war.
So this single exchange really puts it to you, the listener, who actually holds the moral high ground here. When both sides are driven by desperation and revenge, the lines between hero and monster just edit. They dissolve. So now let's shift over to Troy, where we see this mirror image of decay. Section 2 focuses on the heroes under siege, and Hektor's burden really shows us that while Troy's physical walls were still standing, its foundational myth, the invincible hero, was crumbling from the inside out.
Hektor, the Lord of Battles, the man known throughout the Great Green as the one who never loses. And he's just buckling under the immense weight of that myth.
And the sources are so unique here because they get into his personal struggles, the physical stuff that you never hear about in the glorious war stories.
Right.
I mean, here's where it gets really interesting. The pressure of being this hero is literally breaking him. Physically, it's not just fear of death. It's the sheer exhaustion of always being the symbol of hope.
The sources detail his trembling hands, which he tries to hide, his sleepless nights, and the chronic gnawing pain in his shoulder and his knee-old injuries that never heal because he never rests.
It's debilitating stress. And he can't even tell his own brother Dios about it.
He can't. He knows that if the Lord of Battles admits he's frail, the entire city's morale could just shatter.
He wants to say, I am a man just like you. I bruise, I bleed. And if I go on fighting, one day my luck will run out.
But he can't. That expectation keeps him silent, and the silence just makes the pain worse. He's carrying a whole nation's morale on his shoulders, all alone.
And just as Hektor is breaking down internally, the city itself is mirroring that decline financially, that golden river of wealth Agamemnon wanted so badly. It was slowing to a trickle.
Absolutely. The sources show a clear link between the leadership's declining morale and the economic behavior of the citizens. The merchant families, the lifeblood of Troy, were already starting to flee. They could sense the end was coming.
They weren't fighting for glory. They were trying to save their assets.
Of course. And the moment that really seals it for them is Priam's late decision to build a wall around the lower town. Priam was always careful with his wealth, so for him to suddenly agree to this huge expense...
It's a sign of desperation, not strength.
Exactly. It was supposed to reassure people, but it had the opposite effect. The merchants saw those new walls going up and thought, okay, time to get out now before the Mycenae break through and take what's left.
So this financial squeeze, the internal pressure, it all leads to these disastrous strategic miscalculations. We have Polites, the new strategos, the general, and he and his brother have to face this huge military reality about one of Troy's most legendary assets, the Trojan horse.
Okay, and wait, before we go on, we have to clarify this for you, the listener.
Right.
When we talk about the Trojan horse in these chapters, we are not talking about the giant wooden statue.
Right, not yet anyway.
That's a later event or a separate story. Here, the Trojan horse refers specifically to Hector's elite cavalry regiment, thousands of riders.
And that distinction is absolutely crucial, because Polites and Antiphones, they realize the bitter irony here. This elite cavalry, it's completely useless in a long siege.
You can't stable thousands of horses inside the city. You can't feed them. They calculated that if the cavalry got trapped inside the walls, they'd starve or be forced to slaughter their own war horses for food.
So the strategy has to be inverted. The cavalry has to stay outside the city.
Right. They have to stay mobile, disrupting Mycenae supply lines, hitting the slow-moving phalanx when it's vulnerable. But a plan like that requires clear, rational command from the top.
Which they weren't getting from King Priam.
No. Priam was descending into a kind of madness. The source gives this devastating moment where he forgets he even ordered the defense plan. He sees the cavalry outside the walls and demands to know who authorized such a risky maneuver.
That's terrifying. That forces a fundamental shift in loyalty, right?
It does. Hector's personal guard, the Eagles, they realize they can't trust the king anymore. So they start bypassing Priam and reporting directly to Polites. It's a quiet coup, really. Polites becomes the effective leader of the war effort.
And it's in this climate of chaos and fracturing command that the city suffers this sharp personal tragedy, the assassination of Dios in the marketplace.
Dios, Hector's brother, a huge blow to morale. But what makes it even worse is that he was the wrong target.
The assassins were meant for Helikaon.
They were. Agents working for Agamemnon. Helikaon had just bought some jewelry nearby. The killer's father, who was the spotter, had poor eyesight and made a fatal mistake.
Which just highlights how Helikaon's very success made him and everyone around him a target.
It does. And Priam's response, it just reveals the final desperate cruelty of his reign. He orders that the killer's sons are to be burned alive on Dios's funeral pyre.
To serve him on the dark road.
An act of extreme ancient vengeance. It signals a complete breakdown of any kind of legal restraint.
And for Helikaon, the emotional cost must have been immense. He realizes his own success, his reputation as the burner, has just caused the death of his best friend's brother.
It's a terrible realization. Even his victories create casualties among his allies. In this war, personal fame was a death sentence for those you loved.
So moving on to Section 3, let's explore these threads of prophecy and destiny that are still pulling all the strings. And the key figure here, of course, is the prophetess Kassandra, King Priam's daughter.
Kassandra is one of the most tragic and fascinating figures in the whole story. I mean, everyone thinks she's insane. She's always talking in riddles. Nobody listens to her warnings. But she holds the key to understanding the difference between, temporary power and an enduring legacy.
Even her prophecies about her own family are confusing. She tells Helikaon and Hektor they would live forever. But then she also predicts her own death, high in the Mycenae, sitting upon a rock.
And that 3 kings would take to the clouds with her. Yeah. It's a paradox. How can you live forever and still die so spectacularly?
So what's fascinating here is, what did she really mean?
Well, her insight is that forever doesn't mean physical immortality. When the Egyptian prince Gershom asks her about it, she clarifies. She meant that their names would live on, that their story would be told. The end of their memory was so far away, it might as well be forever.
So she's predicting their fame. The stories that we're literally discussing thousands of years later. The currency of real immortality for her isn't gold, it's the story.
Exactly. The man who is remembered has won, regardless of what happened to his body or his treasury. And we see her prophetic power in action with the strange transformation of Gershom, the Egyptian prince.
Gershom, the man of stone. The sources say Kassandra takes him to a cave and uses burning opiates to induce visions.
It's this profound moment of him finally submitting to destiny. He's always resisted her before, but he breathes in the smoke, and what he sees just shatters his whole identity. He sees that he's a changeling, The baby his mother bore was stillborn. He was secretly swapped by desert people years ago. It explains why he's always felt like an outsider, even as a prince.
But the vision goes deeper than just his origin story.
It does. It connects him back to a long-forgotten sacred vow he made to a desert prophet. He'd promised to serve the prophet for a year if Helikaon was healed from an injury. This debt, made under pressure and long forgotten, suddenly becomes real and absolute.
So he just leaves. An aristocratic prince just up and leaves to become servant.
Immediately, he travels under a new name to answer a sacred debt he only understood after Cassandra's vision. It just underscores how profoundly these characters, even the most rational ones, still believe in fate.
Speaking of fighting fate, let's shift to the ugly king, Odysseus, a man famed for his cunning, but whose judgment is completely undone by his love for his wife, Penelope.
This is a tremendous counterpoint to Agamemnon. Odysseus is all logic, except when it comes to Ithaca. His love just blinds his famous cunning. He gets news from home and just races back, abandoning the main war for a personal rescue mission.
And the timing is critical. He knows he's almost 50, that his aging body would betray him against these vile young men. Logically, he should have waited for spring and brought an army.
But he couldn't. He sacrificed strategy for immediate personal feeling. And when you read what was happening to Penelope, you understand why. The sources paint this horrific picture of her torment. She's chained to the throne, her head shaved, fingers broken.
It's not a political siege. It's personal violation. Antinous and his pirate fleet, nearly 200 warriors against a tiny garrison of 30 old men and boys who were slaughtered.
And what's even more heartbreaking is that Penelope, who is pregnant, is debating suicide. She figures if Odysseus knew she was dead, he'd have no attachment left and would return later with a clear head bent only on vengeance, with an army big enough to win.
That's the ultimate tragic calculation, sacrificing her own life to ensure her husband's later strategic success.
But Odysseus doesn't wait. And in this remarkable twist, we see him ally with Achilles, a man who is, technically an enemy of Troy, but a man of profound personal honor.
Their alliance really highlights this theme, that personal honor can sometimes outweigh national allegiance. Achilles is at Troy for his own reasons, for Patroclus, but he's moved by Odysseus' raw courage and desperation.
And that temporary unity is what lets them succeed against the pirates. It reinforces the idea that true heroism sometimes means abandoning the formal war entirely and prioritizing the immediate, intimate debt of love and honor.
Okay, now we shift to the final dramatic climax, the moment when everything that's been set up comes crashing down. And it starts with a moment of profound genius on the high seas, Helikaon's return.
This action, which is often overlooked, is absolutely critical to Troy's survival. Helikaon, on his ship, the Xanthos, the Death Ship, returns with a crucial cargo of tin.
Why tin? Why was that so important at this specific moment?
Because tin is required to make bronze. For weapons, for armor. And their supply lines were completely choked off by the Mycenaean blockade. Without this delivery, the forges in Troy go cold. They can't rearm.
And his naval strategy for breaking that blockade was just incredible.
He used nature and deception. He exploited the predictable north wind, the scythe. He used a decoy ship, the Artemisia, to lure the Mycenaean fleet into a tight formation, making them think they were trapping just one vessel.
And when they took the bait?
He used the wind to maneuver the Xanthos at impossible speed and just unleashed fire and chaos on them. It was a masterclass in sea combat, a huge strategic victory.
And that tin delivery enables another crucial innovation, this time on land, by the smith Kalkias.
Yes. Kalkias had been mocked for trying to use these valueless red rocks to make weapons.
He was trying to pioneer iron, wasn't he?
He was, and by using this innovative furnace design, harnessing the incredible heat of the north wind, he actually succeeds. He smelts usable iron from ore. The first result is an iron sword, forged just moments before the massive furnace collapses.
So a huge technological leap, born out of pure necessity. But even with this brief reprieve, the tide of destiny for Troy couldn't be turned. The city's greatest hero, Hektor, finally meets his end.
He fights Achilles, who is, of course, consumed by vengeance for the death of Patroclus.
But what defined that duel, despite the brutal outcome, was the honor shown by Achilles.
It was a duel between equals. After Achilles wounds Hektor and he drops his sword, Achilles doesn't press the advantage. He actually steps back and gestures for Hektor to pick it up, allowing him to die an honorable death, armed and ready.
And that honor continues after his death. He's given this massive funeral pyre, with the people of Troy donating their own furniture to fuel it. It just shows the immense respect he commanded.
His forever legacy was secure. But with Hektor gone, the final defense of Troy depends on desperation, exhaustion, and ultimately on betrayal.
This is the moment.
Yeah.
The Mycenae, frustrated and starving, enact their treacherous plan at the Scaean Gate.
They stage an attack using the appearance of the Trojan horse cavalry regiment returning. Just a dust cloud of riders on the horizon to trick the weary guards into thinking salvation had arrived.
And the guards, exhausted and hopeful, fall for it. The veteran Kalliades realizes the mistake too late, screaming "No!" as the gates creak open and the enemy floods in.
This triggers the last barricade. The Trojans use their last resource oil to create fire gullies, incinerating the attackers in the narrow gate.
And the Mycenae response is just as brutal. They use lances to kill their own burning comrades to stop the panic from spreading. It's this moment of cold military effectiveness, even in total chaos.
The final defense falls back to Priam's Talus, led by Banokles and Kalliades, supported by Andromache and the women of the horse archers.
And Banokles, the lucky fool, he finally meets his end fighting Ajax, defending a corridor. He lived each day like it was his last.
A fitting end. And Kalliades, now holding the famous sword of Argurius, a Mycenae who died defending Troy, he has his chance for revenge against Ajax, but he doesn't take it.
Why not?
In that crucial moment, he chooses loyalty to Argurius' legacy over personal vengeance. Argurius represented loyalty that transcended allegiance. Kalliades realizes honoring that is more important than killing Ajax.
And in the middle of all this chaos, Helikaon scales the impossible north wall of the palace.
He believes it's the only way to save Andromache and the boys. And when he finds her, it leads to this massive secret revelation that changes everything.
The truth about Astyanax.
Andromache finally tells him. Astyanax, Hektor's supposed son, is actually Helikaon's child.
Wow.
Conceived when Helikaon was delirious, a secret she and Hektor kept to protect the child from Queen Hecabe. She pleads with him, "Both of these boys are your sons. You must save your son."
So Hektor knew. All along.
He knew. The epitome of the honorable hero spent years raising, loving, and protecting another man's son, his friend's son, to shield him. It completely redefines Hektor's legacy. It's an act of incredible, quiet sacrifice.
The escape is no longer just about saving friends. It's a father saving his secret dynasty.
It is. Helikaon and Kalliades escape, with Kalliades carrying Astyanax strapped to his chest. But the tension isn't over. They're intercepted by Admiral Manatos and his men seeking vengeance.
This should be the end. Manatos, the man who said the loser's a murderer, now has his chance to be the hero.
But he doesn't take it. He's revealed to be a man of complex honor. He remembers that Helikaon once spared his life, and he honors that personal debt.
What does he say?
He says, "Go your way, Helikaon. Matters are now equal between us. I give you and your people your lives, just as you once gave me mine."
That's profound. So the greatest escape of the war happens because an enemy commander chose a personal debt of honor over military command. It's a stunning bookend to their earlier conversation.
So let's move to Section 5, the immediate aftermath of Troy's destruction. And we see the conqueror, Agamemnon, get humiliated almost instantly. It shows how fleeting victory really is.
He barely has time to sit on Priam's gold throne before the real power shows up, the Hittite Emperor Tithalias.
And Tithalias confronts him and just forces the Mycenae out. He exposes the great irony of Agamemnon's financially driven war. He points out that Troy is finished, Agamemnon, thanks to you, not because of the fighting, but because of the massive Mycenae fleet that was wrecked in the bay.
It silted up the harbor.
Exactly. The wreckage caused rapid silting. Troy, the great trading city, is no longer a viable port. In his desperation to seize the treasure, Agamemnon destroyed the very economic value of his prize.
So Agamemnon, the technical victor, is reduced to chasing a personal blood feud. He pursues Helikaon to the island of Thera.
And that desperate chase leads him straight into Kassandra's destiny, the most spectacular prophecy fulfillment of the whole narrative.
Kassandra is waiting for him on Thera, the Blessed Isle.
She is. She had predicted the cataclysm with chilling accuracy, describing the growing chamber of fire beneath the island. She said the island would soar into the sky like a pebble.
And Helikaon and the Xanthos arrived just in time to get her warning.
They escaped just before the eruption, rowing furiously, literally seconds ahead of the massive tidal wave.
But Agamemnon, Menelaus, and Idomeneus, the three kings, they arrived just in time to witness it.
And Kassandra, fulfilling her prophecy, is standing on the cliff face, appearing radiant and blazing with beauty amidst the fire and ash. The island rises up violently, flinging the three kings to their deaths. Kassandra waves goodbye as the island soars, fulfilling her final prophecy.
So the financial mastermind of the war and his allies are just obliterated by an act of nature, wiped clean.
A force far greater than their armies. And so the world is reset. Helikaon sails toward the Seven Hills, a new settlement founded by Trojans who had fled the siege years earlier.
The Seven Hills is a really important detail here, isn't it?
It's the future. It's described as a growing, thriving community, a place of hard work, far from the collapsed empires of the Great Green. It's a new beginning.
And Helikaon's ship, the Xanthos, loses its black horse sail in the disaster. He decides not to repaint it.
He's seeking a new symbol for the future. It's a physical act, a break from the past.
And the final layer of prophecy ties back to Kassandra and the child Helikaon rescued, Astyanax.
Her ultimate paradoxical prophecy that Astyanax will have no sons, but because of him, a dynasty will be founded and it will last 1,000 years.
That is a stunning piece of narrative design. So the dynasty isn't founded on direct male lineage, but on something else.
On survival, adaptation, and the concealed protection of Hektor, a dynasty born from an act of love and a noble betrayal.
And finally, Odysseus. He remains the ultimate survivor.
Of course, injured and scarred, but he promises to look for Helikaon in the spring. And he provides the final, vital philosophy for this collapsing world. He reflects that common people are simple men and revere the gods. We all need something to have faith in.
He understands it's the stories that endure.
Exactly. And Andromache's final thought on him sums it all up. Odysseus is a storyteller, and storytellers never die as long as their stories live on. The kings are dead, the city is gone, but the epic narrative remains.
So what does this all mean? We watch kingdoms crumble, not from one big battle, but from bad finances, personal vendettas, and just the winds of fate. Yet in the ashes, we found unlikely mercy from an enemy commander, Monados, true honor in a duel, and the birth of a dynasty that was hidden in prophecy and protected by this incredible sacrifice.
And if you connect this to the bigger picture, the material is really a powerful commentary on the nature of legacy, the financial bedrock, the vast armies of the Mycenaean Troy. They vanished in an instant, swallowed by the sea and the silt.
But the names.
The names, Achilles, Hector, Odysseus, Helikaon, they live on just like Cassandra promised. The true value that survived wasn't the gold, it was the resilience of their stories.
Which raises an important question for you to think about. If the true dynasty of Troy was founded not by armies or gold, but by a child whose parentage was kept secret, forcing his protectors on this desperate journey to found a new nation. Does that mean that the greatest acts of creation are always born out of the deepest ruins and the quietest, most noble betrayals?